Doyle put pen to paper to create the character destined to become the most famous detective ever. But the origins of Sherlock Holmes and the fascination that now surrounds him are just as intriguing as the stories themselves.
Over the years, Sherlock Holmes has been played by more actors than Miss Marples has had cream teas. In the company of his faithful friend and biographer, Dr. John Watson, he brought criminals to justice with methods ruled by science and logic. He came to life in 1887 from a story by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who had this to say about the legend he created.
It always annoyed me how in the old-fashioned detective story, the detective always seemed to get at his results either by some sort of lucky chance or a fluke, or else it was quite unexplained how he got there. He got there, but he never gave an explanation how. Well, that didn't seem to me quite playing the game. It seemed to me that he's bound to give his reasons why he came to his conclusions. Well, once I began to think about this, I began to think of turning scientific methods, as it were, onto the work of detection.
As a small boy, Arthur Doyle was sent from Edinburgh to school at Stonyhurst College in Lancashire. Readers can see how the buildings and personalities of Stonyhurst were reflected in Doyle's writing. For instance, one of Holmes' greatest enemy,
Professor Moriarty.
Oh, Moriarty. Do you know, Holmes, he's the one subject on which I believe you're utterly mistaken.
No mistake, my dear Watson.
That harmless old professor of mathematics.
That harmless old professor of mathematics, as you call him, is the brains behind the biggest criminal organization in Europe.
Whether he got the name from here is quite uncertain. We find two Moriartys, in fact, and they both get mathematical prizes. First, John Moriarty, and the other one was a Michael Moriarty. I can't remember whether he's a brother or not.
And if there was a Moriarty, there was also a Baskerville Hall. The school itself. The character of Holmes has generated stories, novels, hundreds of feature and TV films, and even a successful Sherlock Holmes fan club. He's become larger than life, and larger even than the man who dreamt him onto the page.
Well, the curious thing is how many people there are in the world who are perfectly convinced that he is a living human being. I get letters addressed to him, and I get letters asking for his autograph, get letters addressed to his rather stupid friend, Watson. I've even had ladies writing to say that they'd be very glad to act as his housekeeper.
Even today, little on that score has changed. At Holmes's old address, 221B Baker Street, thousands of letters arrive every year. The only thing is, these days, it's the address of a building society.
They're from all over the world, from the States, Pakistan, India, the Eastern Bloc countries. We've had letters from just about everywhere in the world, I reckon, over the last 4 years. And they're all ages, all types. They're just all Sherlock Holmes fans.
And the success of the Super Sleuth continues into the 1990s. This time, the dynamic duo are played by Jeremy Brett and Edward Hardwicke.
Action!
Well, joining us now are Jeremy Brett and, as Conan Doyle might have said, his rather stupid friend, Edward Hardwicke. Holmes and Watson in ITV's latest series. You see, this is interesting, because you're carrying on the tradition in the Granada series of playing Watson as an intelligent man. And yet we just heard Conan Doyle. I didn't clock it before, but we just heard Conan Doyle saying he's a rather stupid man. But he didn't write him as a stupid man, did he?
Well, I'm glad I didn't see that before we started.
You would have sued him for libel.
You based your entire interpretation of the character differently.
Exactly right.
What do you think?
Don't you think he wrote
The letters were saying he was stupid, but in actual fact...
I think that's what he meant, yes.
And that he wasn't stupid, but that's the way they picked him up.
Precisely, yes, exactly.
That's let you off the hook.
No, I think that's what he meant.
Or Doyle off the hook.
But it's true, though, isn't it, that Watson traditionally was played as a bit of a dimwit, you know, and a sidekick, and that's completely, that's gone now. I mean, your predecessor, David Burke, and now you are carrying on a new tradition of playing him as a bit of a clever clogs.
That was Michael Cox's idea, our producer, who wanted to put literature straight. I think that's why the series originally was thought of.
Yes.
Difficult, though, is it, for you to sort of inject... I mean, because he is, isn't he, always so subservient to Holmes. Holmes always has the upper hand in every scene.
Well, I mean, Watson writes the stories. I mean, the assumption is that he's writing or keeping the record. And I mean, Holmes is a genius. It's an interesting idea that you have a fictional genius. I think one of the few writers that has created a fictional genius. And I think anybody's going to be stupid or seem to be a bit slow by comparison.
Yes, absolutely.
Inevitably.
This is the third time that we've spoken to you, Jeremy. How many years is it now since you've been playing Holmes? Is it
I was asked in 82 and started in 83.
Yes, yes. 8 or 9 years. Has it been, as Judy was saying earlier, a kind of a journey of discovery? I mean, do you now see him differently than you did 4 years ago and from that 4 years before?
I see him as the elusive Pimpernel still, just in front of me. I can't catch him.
Can't catch him.
I think that's why I find it so fascinating to play, because I can't reach him. It is the most fascinating part I've ever played.
I loved what Conan Doyle was saying in the tape earlier, that he was saying that he started writing Sherlock Holmes because he got incredibly irritated with the detective stories he was reading, which is, I suppose, the sort of the Agatha Christie type thing, really, which is sort of like, there is an immediate sort of, there's a sudden happening which says, aha, we therefore know the truth, or there's no clear deductive process. What fascinated him was the deductions.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's what fascinates you, isn't it, and always has done.
I think that it's always been the thing that has fascinated me about him, was the fact that he not only has brilliant logic, brilliant observation, he also has a brilliant feminine intuition, which, looking at Doyle with that great woof-woof moustache, you'd hardly imagine that he would have. But I think he endowed Holmes with that as well. You see, what is fascinating is that that dear, gentle man created these two people, and therefore I do think they're two halves of the same pod.
Yes, yes.
That dear, gentle man created a character in Holmes who actually has a very strong dark side to him.
Yes, I'm looking at Stonyhurst then. I think I can understand where the chill might have come up his spine.
Yes.
And he also wrote, I mean, he seemed an affable old buffer talking there, but he wrote about a quality of friendship in a very sensitive way, I mean, which you both now interpret in a television production. This great bond formed between two Victorian men.
Friendship was allowed and respectable.
Yes. It's a great era of the club, and I think they're very clubbable characters. I mean, it's gone, that sort of male friendship.
But as you yourself noted, I read, you noted that actually the characters of the relationship between Holmes and Watson is actually the basis for a lot of other relationships in fictional detective work ever since, particularly on the telly. You were quoting things like Starsky and Hutch.
Yes, well, I think Jeremy once said that there's all these programs have a kind of bookend. They have a scene at the beginning, a scene at the end, and to some extent they are the sort of modern version of Holmes and Watson.
They work as a double act to a large degree. It's like John Thor and Kevin. I mean, we all have to relate off somebody, and I think maybe this was one of the originals friendships, but I mean, it's been taken forward because it's a very good format.
Yes.
It's interesting that it always works well with two men as well, isn't it? And certainly in the detective field, I suspect what you're talking about, it was the era of friendship, the Victorian Gentleman's Club and everything. It was sort of acceptable to bring that kind of, to show that kind of soft spot or emotion for each other in that tight world of a detective format.
They did try Dr. Watson as a woman with Joanna Woodward. I haven't seen it.
Seriously?
Yes,
Really?
Yes. Joanna Woodward played Dr. Watson.
Extraordinary.
Who played Holmes?
I think
So
George C.
wasn't Paul
Scott.
Newman.
Wasn't Paul Newman, I can't.
George C. Scott, I think.
Right.
Two things I've heard this morning which have deeply worried.
Getting extremely worried, yes. Well, let's talk about the change that you would have experienced when Edward, you took over from David Burke. Were you worried about not about him coming, but about a change in your sparring partner on screen?
Yes.
Were you?
Yes, truthfully. But then this miracle occurred. And Edward is a very gentle person and was very sensitive and tried very hard not to upset the boat or shake the boat in any way, and succeeded. And what could have been a disaster for the series turned into a bonus.
Yes.
It was a great shock at the beginning because David and I had been together for about 1.5 years and we built up a great rapport. And he wanted to go home because he had a young son called Tom, who was then 2, was a bit older now, and wanted to be with him. But it was, actual fact, I think his wife who suggested you, wasn't it?
Yes, well, we were working together.
That's right.
and David was trying to decide what he was going to do.
And how did you feel about being cast in the part?
Well, Jeremy's very generous about it, but in actual fact, it couldn't have been made easier. I mean, for one thing, I think you start with an advantage in that there is a definite visual picture of these two men. I mean, you would think of Watson with a bowler hat and perhaps Holmes in the dark coat. So you, in a sense, I don't think I looked that different once you got all the clothes on. And I think everybody made it so easy. I mean, Jeremy was incredibly helpful, Michael, our producer, and it wasn't, I mean, one wasn't aware. The greatest compliment was after about, I don't know, second episode where I was in, and somebody, I was called David several times. And I thought, that's all right.
I think it was it Lord Olivier? I don't know if he said it to you, but he said it to, he's quoted as saying it. When a very well-known actor, such as yourself, was taking over, and it was an established part. He said, never be afraid to pinch his best bits.
That's right.
Did you, have you taken any of...
Well, I mean, it's all there, isn't it? We are terribly lucky with these characters because, in a sense, it's there in the books, so everything is there. And yes, you do. I mean, you do try. Curious enough, that was taking over in Tom Stoppard's play Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, which I think has, again, that relationship is a similar kind of thing. It's the brain box and the sort of slightly slower character. But he did say that, yes, pinch it.
Pinch it, Gavin.
You come from a very strong acting family. I mean, your father, Sir Cedric Hardwicke, was, he actually played Holmes, did he not?
Yes, I didn't know this, actually, until we were filming in Liverpool. And somebody came on the set who was a sort of Holmes buff, and there are a lot of them around, and produced this tape and said, have you heard this? And it was a radio broadcast that he did in the 40s, I think about 45, doing the Speckled Band. I think it was only the one-off thing, but I had no idea.
And you played Watson once, a long time ago.
Yeah, that was handy.
Yes. Just sort of as an insight into the character.
Yes, it was handy in the circumstances. It was a very good thing that I did.
Yeah.
When you say that you describe Holmes as the elusive Pimpernel, and the closer you get, the further he moves away, do you think that actually indicates that there isn't really a final definition of Sherlock Holmes?
No, I think probably it's better read, truthfully.
Really?
I think that partly thanks to Granada, and we've gone back to the books, that people... I met a lady the other day called Templar, and she's lecturing in Pennsylvania, and they're using the films to stimulate the children to get back to reading.
Yes.
And the fact that we've done the original stories, I think, has been a very good way of introducing them to Doyle's writing. No, I don't think that it's possible to capture them all essences on film. No, I don't. That's why it's so fascinating to do.
Well, it's wonderful to have a bit of television history, really, here. You must have felt that when you joined, actually, when you joined, knowing that you were stepping into what has become a legend, and will be viewed and screened probably in 30 years from now.
Well, it's very intimidating,
yes. You said that on the set, watching him is wonderful because he's like one of the Victorian actor managers.
Well, he has an extraordinary... No, he's been marvellously... he creates a wonderful atmosphere on which is, as they did. But I think he has an amazing ability to bring that sort of Edwardian thing onto the screen, which is very difficult to do.
I think we've got just a faint sniff of why it works so well between the two of you in the role. Thank you both very much indeed. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.